to use it to really review things. And that means memorize them. This week, we are reviewing, spending a week reviewing the entire unit. So that's chapters 14 through 17. Okay. So I have a worksheet for you to do. And then next week, I'm going to bring you a unit test. And I want you to do it without looking in the book. But the good news is you know exactly what's going to be on it. It's what's on the review. There's never going to be a surprise on one of these. You know exactly the endings you have to know. You know. So what I want to do is for the first part of class, let's look at the worksheet I gave you, the chapter 17 worksheet. Okay. Let's work our way through some of the sentences, just kind of a general review. We're going to put our noun endings on the board to remind us. And then I want to show you, go over the review with you, okay? And then at the end of class, I'm going to tell you what my plan is. We have 6 more weeks after this week. And I think I told you, did I tell you this, that the next unit has massive amounts of memorizing? Did I show you that? So there's 30 different ways to say this and these. There's 30 different ways to say that or those. There's 30 different ways to say him, her, it, or they. And you have to memorize them all. And I feel like memorizing hasn't been the strongest suit for some of us in the class. Also, I think it's always better to cement what we know rather than just, like, I could pour a bunch of stuff into you for the next 6 weeks that it will be meaningless to you and you will just forget it instantly, you know, or we could backtrack. So I have a plan. I have a plan. All right. But first, let's go over here. I am just not going to use your marker because they just don't have. Does the green one have a? I don't even know how that happens. That's really interesting. They're so short. Okay, you know what? Just a second. I'm going to go get mine. All right. Can you see this, John? Okay. Let's do our noun endings. Okay. First declension. I, I, is, as, is. Second, us, o, is, as, is. Second declension neuter. E, o, a, is, a, is. Then we have third declension. X, is, e, m, a, s, ebus, s, ebus. And then we have these third declension neuters, X. I usually do this. I don't have a word. Can we just call it that? That'd be funny. Is, e, ps, a, ebus, ebus. And then we have, I know, third declension I stems, which are our is, e, m, a, s, eum, ebus, s, ebus. Okay, some of that we're going to review along with our adjectives. But first, let's take a look at this chapter 17. Did you check it? And if you checked it, did you have any problems that were wrong and you just don't know why? Okay, that's always the most important. If you know, that you did it wrong and you know why you did it wrong, that's different than I completely don't know why this is wrong. Let's do some sentences. All right. What?
Sentences are on day 3.
Oh, okay. I see some on day 2. Am I looking at the right thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes. Let's do a couple of the day 2 sentences because the thing you learned in chapter 17 was certain verbs and adjectives that use the dative. Usually when we have a verb and we lack, that's one you learned, right? Let me look at the ones that you learned. That is not one that you learned. Study. Let's look at that one. Studio, study. Usually in English, we would say, I'm studying Latin. And if I looked at that sentence in English, I would say, what is the subject? I do what? I study, verb. Study what? Study Latin. It's a direct object. And in my English grammar brain, I would say, well, that would have to be in the accusative case, wouldn't it? That's a direct object. But we found out in chapter 17 that some of these verbs in Latin have the idea of it being directed to something. And so when they say study, they really mean I am directing my attention to this. And whenever we do a to, that's like an indirect object. What am I directing? My attention. That's my direct object. What's my attention going to? Latin. So did that make sense to all of you? I feel like we went over that, but as you went through the exercises, did it start to make more sense? That some of these, and some of them in English, we say it this way. Poison is harmful to creatures. Is harmful to creatures. It sounds like an indirect object. It creates harm. Who gets the harm? The creatures. They're an indirect object. Same way with some of these adjectives. We even say it like this. The dog is friendly to everybody who comes in the yard. Friendly to them. Indirect object. So they gave you a few sentences to sort of explore that on the day 2. And let's take a look at just a few of them, okay? Aptum, let's look at the first one. Aptum est liberis studere. Okay, what's our main verb? Well, what literally does the word studere mean? What is that form? When it, but it's the infinitive. So how do we translate an infinitive? We use to. So that really means to study. And that can't really be our main verb. He to study. Do you see what I mean? That doesn't make sense in English. Is there another verb that could be a main verb? Yes. What does est mean? Is. What is? What would be the subject? I mean, just looking at est. Is it I, you, he, she, it, we, you all, or they? Let's do it together. Sum es est. So what is that third one? I, you, he, she, or it. So he, she, or it is. All right. I don't see a he, she, or it that's actually a noun and nominative. So I think maybe he, she, or it is our subject. What does aptum mean? Aptus. It's an adjective. Fitting. Okay. Now, this is very tricky. Actually, this is a pretty rich sentence to go through. Fitting. Look at the ending on fitting. Is that masculine, feminine, or neuter? Think about our endings here. Which one's masculine, which one's feminine, and which one's neuter? It's neuter because it's second declension neuter, right? It's those neuter endings. Think about this. This can mean he, she, or it. He, she, or it. Which one of those is neuter? It. It. I'm going to choose it. Why? Because the ending matches it. How would I put that together then? The aptum est. It is what? It is fitting. You know, we say that. We use that it. You know, it doesn't mean anything in that sentence. It's a terrible thing to say about a sentence. I'm not talking about it, the coat, or it. I just say, here's an example. It's raining. What's raining? The sky, the clouds. I don't mean anything by it. Do you know what I mean? I just say, it's raining. It's snowing. It doesn't designate an actual thing. Latin does it too. It's fitting. It's fitting. And do you understand how I came to realize that's what it must mean? Okay. It is fitting to do what? To study. To study. And to study, it is fitting for whom to study? It is fitting for children to study. Does that make sense? Was that their translation?
It's fitting for
students to study. Okay, awesome. All right. Let's try a couple more of these because I want to work with these weird. I felt like this is the weirdest thing we learned maybe in this unit. The other things were just learning the endings for the adjectives, but this is kind of weird. Okay, infantes sunt cari parentibus. All right, find me a verb. Sunt. Tell me everything you can about sunt. It means they are. Is there anything that could be the they? It would have to be nominative and plural. Infantes. And what do you think infantes means? Infants, young children. Okay, infants. Infants are. What are infants? Is there an adjective that agrees with them? They would have to both be masculine and nominative and plural, because that's what this is. Cari. And, you know, they don't look the same, do they? But it's masculine and nominative and plural. Infants are, what does caros mean? And you can look on your, it's one of your, yeah, dear, or dear. But you know what? It says dear to. It's one of these dative things. Dear to whom? To their parents. And you see how they've chosen to put parents in. And you know what? I did it in English. If I weren't doing Latin at all, I would say children are dear to their parents with reference to their parents. And it would end up being like an indirect object. Okay, let's do one more of these because I feel like, did they give you any that aren't the be verb? Those are all. Oh, okay. No, they're all the be verb. All right. Okay, let's just do this one. This is number 3 in exercise 4. It's a little different. Magnus, Honor, Marco, erat. Okay, find me a verb.
Where is this?
Oh, it's on the next page, and it's number 3, I think. Yeah, okay. Find me a verb. Erat, tell me all about it.
It's imperfect. It's third person singular. And it's he, she, or it was.
He, she, or it was. Perfect. Is there a thing that's nominative that could be the he, she, or it? Honor, which fortunately for us is exactly the same in English. Honor, honoris in Latin, and honor. Is there any word that's also masculine and nominative and singular that could go with honor? Magnus. So what does that mean? Big. Big honor. Great honor. Great honor was. Great honor was. And now we have one word left. We know it's the word Marcus is his name. So he's one of these. But it's Marco. Marco. What? It's dative. So even if I just ignored the rest of the sentence and I just saw Marcus in the dative case, what would I say that means? To Marcus or for Marcus. All right. Now, if I read this isn't going to sound like very good English at all. Great honor was for Marcus. That sounds kind of lame. How can I make that better English? How you know what I mean by that, right? You get an, but how would we, if we wanted to? Yeah, except I don't want to change it that much because I don't want to. I still want there to have the word was. But you're right. If I were John, if I were translating the Iliad or the Odyssey or something like that, or the Aeneid because we're doing Latin, that's what I'd say.
Right.
That's what I'd say because that makes it good English. Let's not make it quite so good English. But how can we say that and still use the word was, but not sound kooky? Yeah. Okay.
A profound statement.
I'm going to give you a hint. And this will make some of your Latin sentences sound a little less kooky. Do you remember a minute ago I told you sometimes we throw an it in when we don't mean it? It's raining, it's snowing. Did you ever notice sometimes we throw a there in? And I don't mean over there. There are cookies on the counter. I don't mean there. I just meant it's just a placeholder. How about there was great honor for Marcus? There was great honor for Marcus. Do you see? I can do that. Sometimes it just doesn't sound right in English unless we throw a random there in. Now you're doing a little eyebrow wrinkle.
No,
Does that mean that you see a problem with that, or do you agree
I got
that we can do that with it? Okay. So that's what I would do with that. But John is totally right. Marcus had great honor. It's totally what I would do if I were translating this into making a book, in English. That would sound best. Okay, let's move away from these be verb sentences and let's look at some of the sentences that had these verbs that we use. Wait a minute. They gave you some of the same sentences on day 3. And did they give you any sentences with these new verbs? Well, that really bothers me. Oh, okay, here we go. I'm actually on the chapter 17 test, that section now. By the way, when we get done, I want to look at your nouns and your verbs at the end. I'm just going to have you give them to me. Okay, let's look at this one. At the top of page 39, it says liberi matri placebant. Do you see where I am? Liberi matri placebant. Okay, let's start with the verb. Find me a verb and tell me everything you can about it. Mm-hmm. What do we know?
It's third person plural,
Mm-hmm.
imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
Placed.
Except you know what? It doesn't mean place. I know it looks like the word place. It's one of our new words. It means please or be pleasing to. They were pleasing to. All right. Is there, what could be the they? The children. Because it's nominative and it's plural, and that's what I got to have plural. The children were pleasing to their mother, and mother is dative because please, placio, is one of these weird verbs. But listen to how I can say it. The children pleased their mother. If I say it like that, it sounds like a direct object. It sounds like it ought to be accusative. Children pleased who? Children pleased the mother. But it's got the idea of be pleasing to. When you learn these verbs, you kind of have to learn that they do this, okay? But here's the great thing about these verbs. If you know it means please or be pleasing, in English, we naturally say to. You know, chocolate ice cream is pleasing to me. I say it. I might more often say it pleases me. I probably would just say I like it, honestly. But if I'm going to use the word pleases, often I say to. So that's an example of that. How about the next one underneath that? Weary, opido, no Kent. What's my verb and what's it mean?
No hint.
Mm-hmm.
Third person. Future. And plural.
Okay. And what would that mean?
They will be harmful.
They will be harmful. Now, here's a little problem. These are the principal parts of Nokia. Nokio, nokere, nokui. Is it nokitum or noctum? I don't want to do it wrong. Nokitum. Now, look at that and tell me what conjugation nokio is. Nokio nokere. It's second. So it's not future, is it? It would only be future if it were third conjugation. So since Nokia is Nokio, Nokes, Noket, Nokemis, Noketis, Noket. So what tense is it really? It's present tense. So instead of they will harm, they harm. Is that what you said? They harm. They are harming. I don't remember how exactly you phrased it.
No, actually, it was future.
Okay, but I mean, did you just use the word harm?
Yeah.
Okay, they harm. Who is doing the harming? Who is the subject? Men. Men harm. What are they harming? The city. But look, it's dative. The men are doing harm to the city. I'm not saying you have to write it like that. The men harm the city is totally legitimate, but it explains why opido is dative. All right. Do you have any questions about that? Okay, does that make sense to you? Could you please give me your worksheet that I had you do. And Preston, did you do it? Did you conjugate the verbs and decline the nouns at the very back? And I just want to, it's just easier for me to look at them than to write them all on the board. And also, I don't remember which ones you did. Okay. You've been doing these for a long time now. You're getting very good at these, Mater. Okay, here's a problem. Mater matris. It's third.
Oh,
It doesn't use those endings at all. So when you learn a noun, you have to learn nominative and genitive. Mater matris, matri, matrim, matre.
Oh, so
Do you see what I mean? So it's not.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking mothers are feminine. So they ought to have feminine endings, which makes total sense, but it's third. Okay.
Right.
Let's flip them. Bellum, belly, bellow, bellum, below, bella, belor, bellis, bella, bellis, or as Ava is listening. Corpus, corporis. Okay, corpori, I don't. Corpus. Oh, corpore. I think, Luke, you just wrote down your stem and you forgot to put the E on. Corpora, corporum, corporibus, corpora, corporibus. Okay, this I am.
That's an
Oh, that's an Okay, awesome. Okay, here's what I love. You remembered it was neuter. Remember, it's still third declension, so it's is. Corpor, corporis, not us, because it's corpor, corporis, corpori, corpus, corpore. Okay, but well done. On the neuter, Mari, Maris, Mari, Mari, Marie. Oh, you just gave it, I like the name, Marie. I like it. You just gave it an I. It's just got an I.
Okay.
Maria, Mariam, Maribus. Well done, gentlemen. I say it like I'm just totally shocked, don't I? It's terrible. Habio. Oh, future. Habebo. Habebis. Habebit. Except you had an E here and suddenly it magically changed into an A.
Wait, okay, so with that, I forgot to change that to an A. When you were telling us 2 weeks ago to write down the word, like we're going to do this in the future tense, I just wrote it down.
We don't want to change it to an A.
Oh, so we want to keep it in E. So that's third?
Yes. No, it's second. Habio, let's do it. Habio, habere, habui, habitum. So when I do find the stem, right? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah,
As long as it makes sense. Okay. Okay. Imperfect. Mittebam, mittebas, mittebat, mittebamus, mittebatus, mittebat. Beautiful, because third conjugation uses bom, bos, bot, just like all the normal verbs. Shouldn't call them normal. Okay. Clamabo, clamabis, clamabit, clamabis, clamabut. Geram, geres. Gerret, geremus, geretis, gerent. You nailed it here. I'm not sure what happened there.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Geram, geres, geret. I don't either. But this is perfect.
Yeah, I don't know what I did there.
Okay. Okay. And then present tense, pono. Oh, this was present. Oh, you wrote present and you wrote imperfect, which is totally fine. Let's see. Pono, ponispnip. You nailed it. And ponebam, ponebot, and you nailed it. You just chose different tenses. Okay. Good. Good. Let's take a look at this unit for review. But actually, first, let's just look through chapters 14, 15, 16, and 17 and remind ourselves of the things we've learned, because those are the things that they're going to put on this test. All right. First of all, always vocabulary words. All right. Your unit for review, you've done these before. You can look in the book. This is not, don't be afraid. Like, this isn't your test. But here's the lovely thing. They've got all the words from the entire unit here for you. And look what they've got, little boxes. The boxes are for you. So here's what I would do if I were you. The first day I would sit down and I would translate all the ones I know. Okay. If I know it, I just go through the whole thing and write down all the ones I absolutely know. Some of them you're going to know because they're just painfully obvious. Scribo means right. Or, parens, parentis means parent. I don't think you're going to have to work real hard on that one. And then what I would do is I would go and fill in the rest, but I would put a little check mark in the box of the ones I didn't know. You see what I mean? And then you may have flashcards, but what I would do is the next day, I would cover this up and I would make sure I would do all of them again, but I would make sure to look at the ones that had a check mark, the ones I didn't know. And I would do it. And as soon as I know it, the first time, I would erase the check mark. I would go through them all every day. But when I nail it, I'd erase the check mark. And your goal is to erase all the check marks, to go through them until you don't have any check marks left. Does that make sense? That's why there's little boxes there. So you're going to be able to go through all the words. And I would go through them all every day, at least once. But what are the things we actually learned? First of all, we learned I stems and that crazy mare, which I'm so pleased you just nailed, the mare. What makes an I stem an I stem? How do I know if a noun is an I stem and has the eum here? How do I tell the difference?
By the two consonants.
Okay, there are two ways, and way number one, that's exactly it. So, for example, herbs, herbis. What does that mean? Do you remember? City. I go to the stem, and of course I have to go to the genitive to find the stem. I take the ending away, and I see that the stem has two consonants in a row. But if I looked at a noun like Lucas, and I did the same thing and I wanted to find the stem, it's only got one consonant and a vowel. So this is an I stem and this isn't. That's one way I can tell. What's the other way I can tell if a noun is one of these crazy I stems? Do you remember? We did these in Memoria Press, didn't we? Did we do I stems? Maybe we didn't. I will tell you, I will remind you. Some words have a nominative and a genitive that are exactly the same or have the same number of syllables. Finis, which means the end or the boundary. Nawis. Do you remember what that one means? That's kind of easy. Ship, because like the Navy. Whenever you have a nominative and genitive that are exactly the same, sometimes they're not exactly the same, but they have the same number of syllables like that, they're also I stems. And what does that mean? Simply this, right? Has an I-U-M. We met, what you just did on the practice sheet for me, a crazy group that are neuter, third declension I stems. And I'm going to write it on the board. Mare is our key one. Mare, Maris, Marie, Mare, Marie, which is just getting weirder and weirder. Maria, Mariam, Maribus, Maria, Maribus. And there are just many weirdnesses here. First of all, eyes just popping up all over the place. And then this very peculiar issue. E, I. They have an I in the ablative singular instead of an E. This kind of infuriates me, frankly. There's no good reason. I'm sure there is a reason. lost in the mists of Roman times why this happened. Now, I point this out because in chapter 15, we learned about third declension adjectives. Some adjectives use third declension endings. And can you both just turn to me, page 104, 105? Let's just look at that place in our books. And we found out some of these have 3 different sets of endings, like colere, colerus, coleri, masculine, feminine, and neuter. Some of them, like omnis, have a masculine and feminine. It's one, and then neuter is the second one. Some of them, like ingens, ingentus, it has a basically one ending. But they're all third declension. But look at those charts. Look at the ablative singular. The ablative singular. They all have an I. This is the tricky thing about these adjectives. They don't use the same ending as the nouns. The adjectives are like these third declension I stem neuters. Notice that they're all I stems. They all have an I-U-M in the genitive plural of every gender. So take a look at these again, and also your review will have you write them out. Okay, so you have another chance to practice them. If you don't know them, if you can't just go and write them out right now, then you need to write them out every day, right? You probably should write them out every day. But it would probably take you about a minute and a half, 2 minutes tops, to write these out. That's the thing to focus on chapter 15. Chapter 16, we learned that there are some third conjugation verbs that end in I-O. And on page 110 in my book, we meet one. Capio. Capio, capere. Capi, captus. It's third declension. But it's got an I-O. And because of that, it's got I's that pop up in unexpected places. In the present tense, we conjugate capio, capis, capit. Everything's fine so far. Capimus, capitus, capiunt. It's sort of like our equivalent of those I stems when an I just pops up. Right, that's fine. I know that it's third declension, so it does bomba spot, or third conjugation. It does bomba spot, just like all other verbs. But it's the stem that's tricky here. I would expect its stem, capio, capere, capi, captus. I would expect its stem to be C-A-P-E. Cape bomb, cape boss, cape bot. That would make sense. Fortunately, it's not. Its stem is capie. It's got an E-I popping in there again. Capie bomb, capie boss, capie bot, capie bombs, capie botus, capie bot. Now, I know it doesn't use bo bis bit because it's third conjugation. But it would not surprise me if an I shoulders its way into this too, and by golly, it does. Capiam, capies, capiet, capiemus, capietus, capiet. All right. And then chapter 17 we just looked at. It's those crazy datives. Those are the things they're going to focus on. All right. So what I have for you is I have a unit 4 review And this is honor system, but I wanted to make it as easy as possible. I printed out the key. But if you just copy it off the key, obviously it doesn't no good. And when I give you the test next week, you will bomb it because you didn't do the work. Do you know what I mean? Like, only you suffer. I don't suffer. But I just thought it would make it easier for you to not have to go online and find it. So take one and pass it down, and then take another and pass it down. And is there one of each for each of you? All right. For some reason, I just printed out many of these. One was for Caden, but it looks like I printed out. Oh, I'll trade you. That explains why I have two. It's almost 1:15. Here's what I want to do. Okay, let me ask you before I do anything. Is there something that's eating at you and you wish we would do some more examples of it? Something that you're finding. Do you want to do a few more sentences? Let's do 2 more sentences. I'm going to do them off this review sheet that I just gave you. All right. Except I'm just weirded out that they gave you the same sentences in different sections. You know what? I don't think we had time to do this. I'm going back to the chapter 16. And I'm grabbing some sentences out of that. Make them lively. We already did some of these. Let's do this one because it's got a bunch of prepositions in it. Let's review some of our prepositions. It's a pretty easy sentence, honestly. But. Pater Cornelii erat in casa cum matre. All right, find me a verb. Erat. We already met this verb today. Do we remember what it means? He, sheer, it was. Is there anything that you think could be the he, sheer, it? All right, and what does pater mean? Father. The father was. Okay, now let me ask you something. Would you expect to have a direct object? Like, do you was something? I'm going to was you. You know, it has no direct object. I don't expect to find any accusative. The father was. But I do have more words left that I have to deal with. So let's take a look at Cornelii. We have some choices, don't we? It could be plural and the subject, Cornelia's. First of all, I don't think there's more than one Cornelia. Second of all, we already said father was the subject. So we have 2 choices. What do you think? Genitive. And if it were genitive, how would I translate that? The father of Cornelia. That makes a lot more sense than the father for Cornelia or to Cornelia. The father was to Cornelia. The father of Cornelia was in casa. In the house. I'm going to ask you a question, and the answer is right here. What case does in take? Ablative. That's why it's ablative. In the house. Cum matre. With the mother. What case does cum take? ablative. See, don't you love those questions where the answers are anyway? Beautiful. Remember, we need to keep reviewing the things that we've already gone over, all right? Like in and come, all those prepositions. It can be kind of a daunting, which, okay, you know what? Because we already, well, all right, we're going to do one more sentence, and then I'll tell you what. Several of these we did last time. New case. In oh, there's a good reason to do this things. Yakiemos. Give me a verb. Yakiemos. What does yakio mean? Just find it. Oh, it was in chapter 16. Yakio, yakari, yeki, yaktus. I like to say that one. It means throw. I's turn into J's when we turn them into English. And so eject, if you eject something, or like, does James Bond like spies and they have an eject button, it makes the person fly out of the seat next to him, right? Eject, throw out. Okay. So yakio means throw. So if that's true, what does yakiemos mean? This is kind of tricky. I'm going to put up here yakio, yakari, yeki, yaktus. So what conjugation is it? Third. And we just talked about this with copio. It's an IO third. And look at its stem here. Yakiemos. What tense is it?
Future.
Yes. Yakiemos is future. So it means throw. It's future. What's it mean? We will throw. Do I need to look for another subject? What's the subject? You just said it. Who's doing the throwing? We. I don't need another subject. We is the subject. We will throw what? Nuts. It's accusative. And where will we throw these nuts? In the road. But I have a problem. Luke just told me that in takes the ablative in casa. In wait a minute, it's taking the accusative. What happens when in takes the accusative? Do you remember? Into. We will throw the nuts into the road. That just seems mean. Cars are going to run over them. Bicycles are going to have an accident. Don't ever do that. Throw the nuts out of the road. Now, you've got the look. You've got the questiony look.
When into the road, they're freshly paving the road and throw them, they get like hardened.
Oh, that's so mean. Don't ever, ever, ever do that. You should be rounded up and roundly chastised if you do something like that. Okay, here's what I want to do. I'm going to take a couple minutes. So we obviously have a problem with this book. I told you at the beginning, it's just a boatload of stuff you would memorize that I just don't even know that we would be able to cover it well enough to make it worth our time. So here's what we're going to do. Next week, I'm going to give you a unit, whatever this is, unit 4 test. And the first thing I want you to do is go home and take the test. I am not going to send home a key because you're going to bring it back to me the next week. I'm checking them. All right. That sheet I just gave you, that's what's on it. You know exactly the words they're going to ask you, the endings you already know. Okay. It's just a matter of working on that. But what I'd like to do, we have 6 more classes after today, and I am going to Xerox scan copies out of Wheelock's Latin, which is the Latin I'm going to use next year for everybody. I'm just going to move through it more slowly because they do a great job of slowly giving you things, but giving you stuff you can actually translate. Not like these translations where half the words you don't know, and some of them are wrong. So we're And it's going to be it's basically going to be first declension, second declension. Many of the words you're already going to know. There are going to be a few new words to learn. All right. And I'm going to make my own little quizzes for each one. And we'll probably spend, we'll see how it goes the first week. Almost everything the first week you will know. All right. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get through 3 chapters. Maybe we'll get through 4 chapters. All right. And we'll spend the time cementing what we've learned rather than me just cramming a bunch of stuff in your brains that will do you very little good. All right. Does that make sense? And I will provide everything. So pretty much after chapter 17 here, we're going to kiss this book goodbye for the rest of the year because it's a grief to me. And if it isn't for you, but it definitely is for me. Okay. Any questions at all? Get yourself ready. You have every reason to just basically ace that quiz I give you because you know exactly, I need to know these endings. I need to know these words. And if you know those, it doesn't sound like you're having terrible trouble on the sentences. I mean, I was kind of looking at your things. It looks like many of them you translated fine. So I think you're ready. All you need to do is just make sure, do I know the words? Do I know the endings? And my advice to you, if it at all can work out in your day, is instead of spending 45 minutes once a day, spend 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon, just drilling. It helps me when I'm memorizing things. The more often during the day I can go to it, if I just leave it out on the table and I just stop for 30 seconds and I go through it and then I move on. If I meet it over and over again, I memorize it faster. And that might help you. Okay. Any questions? All right, we're good. I will let you go.